Hey guys, welcome to another episode of YesUsers podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of industry leaders and innovators. Today, we have a remarkable guest with us, Mr. Sambprasad Kuvalekar. He is the managing director of Prismatic Software Private Limited. With over 24 years of industry experience, Sambprasad has mastered a multiple of roles from software engineering to strategic business development. Join us as we explore his journey, his insights on emerging technology, and his vision for the future of software development. So let's welcome Mr. Sambprasad Kuvalekar. So Sambprasad sir, thanks a lot for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I would like to wish the Gudi Padwa wishes to all our viewers. It's a great start of the new year.
Yeah.
So this is a very nice day to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Great thoughts there. So Sambprasad sir, for our listeners who don't know anything about you, would you care to give them a very short and brief description about yourself?
Yes. So myself, Sambprasad Kuvalekar, I am B.Tech in petrochemical, and then I have around 22 years of experience, overall industry experience, out of which around 21 years in IT. So after doing job in IT, in manufacturing for around 1.5 years, I shifted myself, my career into IT, and around 21 years I'm in IT business, out of which first 10, 11 years I was working in different IT companies, product companies, services companies in different capacities. And then in 2012, I started my entrepreneurial journey where I started my own company called Prismatic Software Private Limited. I think this is a brief background. We will talk more about my career and, some of the interesting facts, during the interview.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that context or giving us that context. Right. So one of the reasons we contacted you was because of your extensive experience in both IT and manufacturing. So is there any one significant or memorable project that you would like to share with us?
So as I said, I have three parts of my career. One is my manufacturing, a small stint in manufacturing for around 1.5 years, 18 months. Then around 10, 11 years of my employment stint in IT. And then around 12 years now as an entrepreneur. So I would probably like to quote one project in each of these phases. I remember in 1999 or 2000, I started my career in manufacturing, and I was working in a steel plant. There are shift duties, and I started as a GET, and after completing a year, I got permanent there, and I started regularly working in a shift. It was a festive season, I remember, where during the night shift, if your plant is closed, then you really have to put in hard work because you have to make the plant operating. If the plant is operating, then your night shifts are not that troublesome. So I remember that day when there was some maintenance issue, and I had to work with my shift in charge throughout the night. And then the next day was a holiday. I think it was Diwali. So my shift in charge left, and the new shift in charge was on vacation. I was waiting for my reliever, and then I got a call from him saying that, can you do it today because I want to take a leave. I would, compensate your working day tomorrow. That kind of adjustment we used to have. I couldn't say no because I was a junior that time. And then I continued, the next 8 hours, that is a morning shift. And I had one more colleague with me for half the time, but he already had a planned leave after 3-4 hours. And then the last 4 hours, I was alone handling the plant. And that was a great experience. That gave me a very good confidence. Of course, I was waiting for the second shift person to come and, take it over. But it was really a great experience. And that gave me some confidence at that, I would say, tender age in my corporate career per se, and that too in manufacturing. So that was about the manufacturing experience.
What was so special about that experience specifically? Was it the fact that, you could help out your senior, or was it You are alone in a big manufacturing plant
So typically,
for your
typically,
4 hours.
yeah, typically when you're in shift and you're a junior engineer, you don't really have to worry about handling the complete shift. There are a lot of, targets per shift. You have to complete certain production. You have to ensure that the plant should run effortlessly, and you have somebody to lead that effort. You just work there as a teammate most of the time in your, initial period. So I just completed 8-9 months or a year that time, and was very new to handling the complete plant. And then two people were not there, so you have to control the control room as well as on field, and as a single person it becomes very challenging, but there was no other way. And my boss obviously was on phone after every 2 hours and checking if things are okay, but then it was finally you who have to run the show. And the shift went very smooth and we could achieve the set production. So that was a good confidence that, at that point, that I can also handle it. It is like captaining your ship when nobody's around.
In the devil's mouth and kind of like, coming alive out of it. And right. So that kind of experience where you were like thrown into this kind of responsibility and you really enjoyed that,
Right.
Having that responsibility to, like you are making some bit of significant impact on the things that you're doing. So you really enjoyed that at that moment.
Yes. Yeah. Then the second experience in my employment stint during IT, it was at the fag end of my employment career when I sort of left the job and started my entrepreneurship. Before that, I was part of a very big US government project. I cannot reveal the details because, there is a confidentiality involved, but I'll just try to explain what the challenge is. So it was a government project. So throughout the year we were working on it. I was the offshore lead on that project, working with my on-site counterpart. So we not only, that was a very complex project and there was a government monitoring. It was for the southwest border zone of the US and Mexico border. So delivery-wise, it was not only complex, but at the end of the project, there was an interview which was conducted by the monitor of the state. Now, the state monitor is a very, very important person, and that interview was a really a great experience. Again, for 10 to 11 years of experience, I was on the verge of my middle management, entry.
Right.
And at that point, this experience, generally the, VPs or directors take that kind of interview. I got a chance to face that interview with the monitor face to face. He was in our offshore office along with a very senior client director. So again, that was a great experience. It was all about the project, but I had to steer that interview with him alone, face to face, along with our country head. So that is a wonderful experience, which taught me a lot of things about attention to details and how to, face those kind of critical interviews. Then the third one, which is very important, is my first entrepreneurial project, which we have done for our Delhi-based customer who had a requirement of a back-end engine for mobile recharge aggregator. He had a requirement of 5 lakh transactions per day. In monetary terms, those are like, 6 to 7 CR. And we started that project in 2013, January. He had to finish that by 31st of March. We launched our product by 1st April. And I started that project with 2 freshers. And I myself, we coded that and it went really well. That was a wonderful achievement as an entrepreneur to start with, because that was my first project. It was very critical to run that, and handling 5 lakh transactions per day on your system. That gave me a confidence that, I can also be an entrepreneur and create something of my own, which I wanted anyways. And I think that was a wonderful start. That application went smoothly live and it was running fine for around 5 to 6 years.
Wow. Thanks a lot for sharing that story. It was really helpful. I have like 2 follow-up questions, right? A lot of youngsters come to me and say that, we are working there and we are like not really happy with the job they are giving to us. And, I'm just trying to like just essentially survive there, right? So I know it makes me sound like old guys, but as to guys with experience, what would you say? Because you're sharing your story across all your three work areas, and I noticed, like, the stories that you picked were the stories where you were thrown into something which you were probably not prepared of, but because of that, you learned a lot, right? What would you say to a guy who doesn't feel that way?
I would say that, take the exposure. I have recently started my own YouTube channel, and I had created a small video on the same topic, that what could be the job offer which you should be accepting at the entry level. See, it is very important that you have to create your base very strongly. So when your first job, first 2 to 3 years, you really have to get your hands dirty. Even if you make mistakes, it is allowed at that point, because nobody expects heroism from you at that point. So mistakes are fine. The moment you try to avoid those mistakes just because avoiding that task, if you grow, and then at later stage of career, if you make those mistakes, the penalties are very harsh at that point. I mean, you may lose your job, you may lose your career. Instead of that, get your hands dirty in the first 2 years. Choose that offer which gives you that exposure, which can make you, a better professional. And in those 2 years, keep your antenna on always. Whatever it takes, you try to do that thing. Even if you make mistake, that is fine. That is allowed. But it will always be deterrent if you, try to avoid those responsibilities.
Right. So that completely makes sense. But what if somebody would say, why should I, try so hard in my current job? I'll do it when I'll have my own venture. Why should I, go beyond what is expected out of me?
The problem is, in the professional world, corporate world, they look for people who are go-getters. So it's fine that if you don't want to grow that fast by putting in hard work and all, I am okay with that. But then whenever there are recessions, your job will be at risk always. Company will always prefer people who are ready to take things on. And the other thing, if you are always shying away from those responsibilities, you may not grow with the pace which the other guys are growing. And then after certain years, you may start feeling that, okay, I am not getting that respect, or I am not getting that responsibility which others are getting, which probably you might not foresee when you are, at the early stage of your career, when you actually want to avoid that job. So it may happen naturally also. If it doesn't happen naturally, then it's fine. And if you can manage your career, then it's okay. But I think most of the cases, it happens later on, that you feel that, okay, I'm, and you get worried. That is basically, that hurts your confidence. And if your confidence gets hurt, then things become difficult. And then you may lose your job and those kind of things.
Well said. Yeah, my next follow-up question was that, so you did your engineering in a core sector, right? Petrochemical, right? And then you did the transition to IT, right? So you have done that transition. So I have two questions. First, what would be your advice to someone who is desirous of making that transition? And the second question is, how have you seen this thing evolved over your career? How was this transition when you tried to do it, and how different is it now?
So I think the time when I did that 25 years back, the time was right, I would say, for the transition. It allowed me to do that, because the market demand was a little bit different, I would say. The way I did it is, I did a course. It was not a direct jump from A job to B job. I did a course in between. I left a permanent, good salaried job, and took the risk of getting myself trained, and then, start adopting the new challenge. I think that is very important. Those 6 months of CDAC course, which I did after, I left my job of manufacturing, taught me a lot, because then I was alone again, in the new area, and I had to really fight with people who were junior and those kind of things, because I carry that experience of 2 to 3 years of manufacturing. But I took it because I wanted to do it. It was my own decision. And I just, kept on consistently doing it. And then that would, land me a job, and then rest is history. So one thing is that time was right. If you ask me, right now, people can do that transition or not. If they could do it at early stage, I think that is better. When they are at, third year or fourth year of their engineering, or at their graduation, I think it is the right time to choose at that particular point itself what they want to do. Because that is another thing which I keep telling my people, that when you are in your penultimate year or the last year of your graduation, you should do projects, you should do internships seriously, and you should just do a basic thing. But normally people overlook that 70-80% of the students, they don't take their internship project seriously, or their final year project seriously, and then they have hard time to find a job after their graduation. So if they could do those things in the curriculum itself, that can give them a confidence. I mean, they can speak about the same project in the interview, and the interview can go well. The moment you start copy pasting something, the interviewer can understand you have not done anything, and then it becomes a problem. Then what questions I can ask, and then that confidence goes down and people struggle.
Right. Wow. That's really great advice that you gave there. And, I'll ask a little bit of controversial question. Now, like, we are at a stage where information has been democratized, right? Whatever you want to learn is available on internet, right? So should right now people go for engineering degree, or should they directly go and get themselves trained?
It's a good question. I think for simple programmer career,
Right.
really did not have to spend those 12 plus 4 years. I will be very honest. After your 12th, if you're really focused on becoming a programmer, you just can learn any language. You can pick up the language. You spend a couple of years in learning the aptitude and in learning the analytical skills which are required for basic programming. Learn one language, pick up one language, do some practical projects, you will end up in a job. The only thing is, still there are some corporates or some companies who prefer, degrees per se. For that, you need to have some kind of graduation. But capability-wise or employability-wise, if you ask me, you need just 2 years post-12. That is my, opinion. It may sound controversial, but yeah, I mean...
No, it's not a controversial statement anymore. But that's something even I believe. But let me ask a follow-up question on degree, right? A lot of people believe that if you have done BCA, right? BCA, Bachelor of Computer Applications,
yeah.
done the B.Tech degree, you probably are not a good programmer.
No, I don't. I think that's a myth. Even a person who is BA. Having the good aptitude, because for a good programmer, what you need is good aptitude and good analytical skills. Learning the language or a syntax, I think it's not a big deal. Okay, anybody can do it. It's hardly a month job to learn for a good person if you have good aptitude. Aptitude is very basic requirement, and analytical skills. Problem solving skills, if you have that composure of solving a problem, taking things on, think through, have the system thinking ability. All these are basic requirements for a programmer, I would say. You just don't need, that specific degree to really, become a programmer.
Good program. Well said. I completely agree. And you said aptitude, problem solving skills are definitely the important part. So can you define the aptitude bit more specifically so that our listeners can, imbibe those traits?
When I talk about the readiness for programming career and all, I touch upon these things. So in aptitude, basically your 10th level math is what is required. If you're good at basics, if your base is strong, if your educational base is strong, if you could derive the reasoning out of what you are learning, So your 10th level math is very important. If you could really, think analytically very well, your reasoning ability is good. You could derive the patterns from the problem. You could break the problem in pieces. And then if you could break them in pieces and solve them, I think that is what is needed. So you should basically practice fundamental mathematics. I mean, at least for basic level of application programming. Now, there are specific areas where you need, higher education and specific ability where the higher level mathematics has been used and all. Fine. Now, if you talk about data science and all, you need a good statistics background, higher level mathematics, which is more than your 10th level math. So there your engineering mathematics will help. So I would say, your engineering degree, if you are really going for it, you should have a perfect picture of exact role what you're going to play. Then it is okay. But if you want to just become an application programmer, I don't think you need all of that.
Wow. Right. And, and we will talk about the technology a lot more because we know you are a technology evangelist. But I just remember, a lot of software or a lot of computer science B.Tech students are coming to me and saying, what would happen after the generative AI has come into the limelight? How should we be preparing for the future?
Yeah, that's a good point and very hot topic.
Yeah, I know.
Today, I think the human thinking is always will have an importance. There are 2-3 aspects to this. I would like to talk. AI is definitely going to make an impact. Take that. But before AI, there was Google. People used to do a lot of search on Google. There is a humor in IT that they say that, close down Google, 90% of the IT companies will be closed. So we'll have to come out of that mindset. So if you are talking about AI taking your job, it is your ability to control. If you could control the automation and if the automation is in your hand, what does that mean? All your mundane tasks, no-brainer tasks will be done by machine. Take it for sure. That means your responsibility as a learner increases so that you can think about the complex scenarios for which a human intervention is required. And you have to master that. You have to reduce the time to come out with the solutions for those complex scenarios. That can happen when you are studying, in your study phase itself, in your educational phase itself. And that is the only reason why I'm saying when you are in the penultimate year of your career or at the last year, you should always be in that mode if you really seriously want to be a programmer. Most of the times, people are not really know what they're going to do after their graduation, and that becomes a big problem.
Right.
And then it is always the fear that whether the automation will take over and all. See, one thing definitely is going to happen that if there are 10 jobs I have right now for, let's say, programming a particular average level complex programs, I think I may not need all 10. When AI, is powerful, it may take 3-4 jobs out of that. But it will create new jobs to control those, AI related things. Because industry, so there are 3 stages. One is the technology, second is industry. 3, I would say 3 pillars. One is industry, second is technology, and third is academia. So technology is always ahead. Industry is behind the technology, and academia is way behind, than the industry. So it's always, that race which will happen, I would say. What we see is 1/7 part of the iceberg of technology adoption. The adoption starts at some level in the world, at some percentage. By the time it percolates down, it takes time. Obviously, you have to be aware of what is going to happen and prepare yourself accordingly. So I would say we have to learn. I think that is the important thing, in the current era. We have to be on our toes on what is happening around, what is possible, how can we effectively use technology in our learning process, which we are at currently. I mean, at whatever stage currently the students are, they should always think about it, because the next generation is very smart. They know all the ifs and buts and nuts and bolts of the technology, which is around at the high level. The only thing is they should think about how can we apply it effectively. If they could do that, I think they will not have the question that whether AI will take over it or not.
Yeah. My observation is getting hired, getting placed is gonna get difficult. That is a fact. And you made a comment about academia. I think a lot of people are going to hate comment on this video. People are going to say it's because of our research that technology is evolving, right? It's because of our research papers, especially in the Western countries, the research Berkeley, Stanford are doing. They are definitely laying the foundation of the technology that we are using today, right? Like brings to me a very a foundational problem in our education system. Why are we so bad at research? Why are we not filing as much patents as Western universities? Why we are not doing that level of original research? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think the percentage is increasing in the current time, if you see.
True.
So there is a lot of awareness. There is an ecosystem which is there. People are trying to promote the culture of researchers and all that, and there are institutions which are doing these things. There are incubation centers. The infrastructure is also there, which was probably not there earlier, or I would say less. But now there is a lot of force towards the research and development. I think next 5 to 10 years, India will emerge out of that, and we will be definitely leading leading the world in the technology.
Absolutely,
I'm very optimistic about it.
Let's hope so. We are definitely leading the world in terms of numbers, but I hope we are leading the world in terms of quality as well, right?
Yeah, quality. Our mindset is definitely there is a scope to improve that towards. And that's again, the startup ecosystem in India is emerging. I think that is a positive sign. But creating jobs for ourselves, first of all, make yourself employable. That is the starting point. And then create opportunity for others to be employable. I think that is the mindset which we should be having. Our current generation should have that. I am very positive about it. Yeah. The future is really bright, but yes, I mean, this change is required. Once this happens, I think we will get there.
Absolutely. So, we noticed that you have, managed team across different countries. You have traveled to many countries. Any valuable cross-cultural insight that you have observed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was in the US, I was in the Israel with different capacities. So I went there as a developer. I was an on-site coordinator, coordinating the product development and the product management team. Couple of points I would say. One is, the hygiene factors which the other countries follow as a professional. I think those are very important. If you are meeting someone, your meeting should start on time and it should end on time. We have improved a lot on starting the meetings on time. So I thought we have to improve on ending it on time.
Yeah, I think a slight hint to me as well, dude. I have started the meeting on time. You better end it on time as well.
Yeah.
Don't worry. You go on.
Yeah. So and planning your tasks. I think that is another thing which I learned, especially in the US. They are very good at planning. They will be focused on their tasks. So if you are in the office for 8 hours, just finish work and, you will go. I mean, you'll not discuss other things. And then after that, it is your personal life. You do whatever you want.
Absolutely.
When I was in Israel, I think empathy, being a professional, is an important aspect, because sometimes the language, what you're trying to speak, your English and the English which is being received, there might be some gaps. So you really have to either speak the way they speak, or you speak in such a way that they will understand. So pick those words, be empathetic with them, and so empathy is very important when you are at foreign location. That is another lesson which I learned. But I think I had fun, with all of my colleagues, counterparts in the US and Israel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I'll say, what advice I give to young people that, now the world is so much global. Like, sitting here in India, you sometimes have the opportunity to work from people from other countries as well. Definitely jump on those opportunities, because you will definitely get to learn. The cultural insight is something nobody can teach you. You can only learn it by spending time with those people. And the technique or the hack that you shared of echoing, this is actually a technique called echoing, and speaking in the manner the
Yes.
person in front of you is speaking, and that's very effective to create rapport, especially with people you have just met. Right. So now, I know you have been waiting for this question. So tell us something about Prismatic Software. We know it was founded in 2012. So what inspired you to start this? What problem are you trying to solve? And what kind of customers you are, helping these days?
I will talk a bit about, why I did start this and all. So I graduated in 1998, and then I started my IT journey in around 2001. So 2005-6, during that time, I born and brought up in a very rural area. I'm a teacher's son, and so when I was growing, I spent my 15 years in the village. So I used to see the youth at that time who were getting graduated from the semi-urban or the rural colleges, but they were not, that degree was not able to give them employment. And then, they used to do all those things which they should not be doing. I was watching that. I grew up watching that. And there was something in my mind that, I want to solve this problem. So during 2005-6, I used to read the papers, Times of India. There was a news that they started BPOs in South, especially with, those tier 2, tier 3 cities. That time I thought that, okay, I also can start something like this in my village or a taluka place where, there are some facilities, because the talent there is, they are definitely more than average. If you could really hone them a little bit, they can really do a great job. The only thing is you have to train them. You have to, give that tender love care to that youth so that they can become employable. Somehow it was there in back of my mind, but I could not, pursue on that. And then 2012, there was a point when I start, my journey towards my middle management. I realized that if really I wanted to give something back to my profession and I want to create a positive impact, I think I have to start something of my own. And there was the history of that project which I talked about, that there was something in my mind that I can alone do something. The only thing is I had some product ideas in my mind, and I spent some time in preparing that. When I see that I could get my first customer, I left my job and I jumped in. But then I realized that I'm not ready for product. I've got all those good, bad experiences. And then I realized that, okay, I cannot do product. I may be good at developing the product, but taking the product to market is a different ball game altogether. And let me do services only, because the services requests were coming in. And I started with that project, and then Prismatic started. And then the problem was I was not ready with the service strategy in mind. Although I had experience in services and product, the thought process was I am a product by heart. So that took, initial 1 or 2 years to really learn. I'm a first generation entrepreneur. Nobody has done business in the family. So all those challenges were there. But I stayed put, and I kept doing efforts towards sales. Was not my forte. I'm a technology person. So that was also learning. And then we started delivering globally with some partners. First, we delivered in the Indian market. Then we started delivering globally using the partners. Then I realized that I have my own customers. Otherwise, there is no point in doing business. Then I started traveling. I traveled to Germany, and I started building some relationships. And now, we've got our direct customers also. And then we delivered in the US, Germany, Singapore, and Australia. 2019, it happened that 1920, it happened that one of my customers in the US, he said that, I want to partner with you strategically and I want to be your stakeholder. So he became a third director in my company, and we've got one of the, leading energy company as our client. And then the journey actually started, the growth actually started. We are primarily working in 4 domains: BFSI, healthcare, energy, and manufacturing. We solved some really good problems in the real-time, mission-critical, high-volume kind of application areas, and we delivered them with our, delivery commitments. Trust is something which is our core value. Innovation is another thing for which we have been awarded by NASSCOM. And regarding Tusk, my first customer, when I invited him for 10th anniversary, which happened, a year back, he said one important thing voluntarily, and that is still in my mind, that, I thanked him basically because he gave me the first project. So I said that, if you wouldn't have given the project, Prismatic wouldn't be there. So on that, he said, you think that you need me more. I think we needed you more at that point, and you helped us more than I helped you, because I never went to any competitor and all that. I was sticking to him. I, manage his business. He could acquire a lot of business at that point due to our application and solve his problem. So I think that was a wonderful, testimonial from the first customer after 10 years. Then we realized during the journey that we have to have some of the differentiators, because otherwise, Java developers, .NET development and all, mobile development, there are n number of companies in the market. So how we are different from them? So we thought that since we are working on specific domains, every project by definition is a unique project, even though if you're working on specific projects, there is always an overlap. So you get 60-70% same work. So we said, why not to adopt the lean methodology and build those reusable components? So on that line, we started working on an idea called our code generation tool called Odyssey. So we built that. The idea was Odyssey will always build a no-brainer code. It will not even look into the complex problems, because for that we have the human capital. And then we have actually tried the existing code generation tools in the market, which are open source and all. But in every product, what we see, in every tool, what we see, that there is always a junk library which you have to incorporate in your deployment. So why deployment infrastructure actually gets disturbed because of that? We said we will not do this. So in Odyssey, you don't have to use any junk library. It is the code which gets generated. You can download it and developer can start. Third, an important idea behind that was our tool will help the developer. It will not replace the developer. And that is an important thought, which I think most of the low-code tools should have, because that gives a better adaptability for that tool. Otherwise, the developer community is always hesitant, and we have those basic instinct, right, as a human, that if something is going to replace us, we will resist. So if you really want to make use of that, you have to ensure that it is helping the developer community. So the code generation tool is something which we developed that helped us. We delivered around 20 to 25% faster, our projects, and that helped our customers. Then recently we've started our AI journey also, and in the Salesforce also we have a capability now. Right. So ready to take over the new challenges in the upcoming time after the journey of 11 years.
Wow, great story there, because I really love the way you try to solve your own problem. And this is what I advise to young entrepreneurs, that they come to me and say that like what startup should we be doing, right? And so I just say to them, try to solve your own problem. And a lot of people come to me and they say, like, we'll do a SaaS business, we'll do that. I just say to them, you don't understand how hard it is to sell to enterprise.
Yeah.
I really, we will do this and this is what will happen, and we'll be able to scale it like that. I said, like, Okay, just forget everything. Just go and sell to one enterprise customer. Just do that. And right. So since you have done that for a really long time, what is like the biggest hack that you have for fellow entrepreneurs?
I would say you have to find out your niche. Uh, if you want to do a product, it's a different game. You really need to, building a product is easy. You really have to find out what customer problem it is solving. And if the problem is bigger, then obviously you have more opportunity to, sell that effectively. So you may be very good at coding and building the product, but it is always important that a good product, I would say, is always that which is being used by the customer. So it may not be a very complex thing which you are solving. It may be a simple problem which you are solving, but the adaptability is more. I think if that is the thing, then you are really creating an impact in their life. So try to think in such a way that what kind of positive impact you are creating in the customer journey. I think that is very important. If you are in services, you have to find out your niche again. You have to pick up a specific technology, stick to that, be a master of that, and provide excellent quality, in that area, and just start building the stories, start helping the customers, and you will grow eventually.
Wow. Great advice there. So we have a surprise for you. We are going to do a rapid fire round just like Karan Johar. So the first question is coffee, green tea or chai?
Chai.
Yeah. Second favorite travel destination?
Europe.
Okay. Any place
Germany.
specific? German. Right. Early riser or night owl?
Early riser.
I'm a night owl. One word to describe your leadership style.
I think it is democratic.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what all dictator also think. All the leaders who have
It's a mix of democratic and paternalistic, but since you asked just one word, it is more of democratic. So
I'll have to ask your people you are managing because even I would say that mine is democratic, but people around me would kind of disagree. iOS or Android?
Android.
Right. Why?
It's just been adopted by it's easily available, easy to use. Nothing against iOS, but yeah.
Sure. A book that left a lasting impact on you.
7 Habits of Effective.
Wow, great book. Yeah.
When I read the Inside Out, the first chapter, I think that is a life-changing one during I was working in the IT industry. That changed my life a lot.
I completely agree. It was one of the early self-help books that even I read. And so far I've read so many, but it's still the best one.
Yeah.
The last rapid fire question that we have for you, beach vacation or mountain retreat?
Mountain, because I born and brought up near beaches. So if you have that, you don't have really a fascination for something which is near to you.
Yeah, we don't value what we have.
Yeah.
So as we're running out of time and we have been, slightly hinted that we should be ending the meeting on time as well. So we have time for just one more question. As a leader, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs and especially who planning to work in tech industry?
Like I said, if you are building a product, try to see what product, what kind of positive impact it is going to, create in the customer journey. Because most of the times when we think about the new business, it's more of honeymoon period for that entrepreneur, and then there is a time always which we forget about what is the purpose, why we are doing it. So we really have to put the customer in the center and think about it. That is number one. Number two, if you're into services, you have to really do specific things. You just and you have to be very clear in which area you want to do that. Now, what will be that area? I think that is something which is up to you. You have to think about it and do it. But if you choose one particular area, I think focus on that. Build your team in that area. Build your expertise in that area, and then there will be a time where you are indispensable in the market whenever that technology or that particular service has been talked about.
Right. That brings me to a very interesting question. How to pick out your own niche, right? And because this is something I have struggled a lot as well. So my question is, what would be your advice on that? Sometimes you try to pick out a niche, you are definitely the world's best in that, but the market is too small, right? Sometimes you pick out a niche where, you might not be the world's best, but the market is huge. At that time, you realize there are like 10, 15 people doing the same thing. So how do you hit that Goldilocks zone?
A is if you are part of, you should know what you are good at. Okay.
Right.
So there is a possibility that you start the business and you may not be the person who you are from sales or marketing or some other other fields than actual technology. You may not be that person who is actually coding or doing that work. In that case, you need to do market study and you think which problem is the biggest problem, and then try to build the team. Then you have to think whatever team you are going to build, what is the strength of that team and can they really deliver that challenge, because you really have less time to prove yourself. One mistake and you're gone. You should not be losing a single customer which is coming to you right from day one, because that gives you a lot of confidence to yourself as well as in the market. Also, your credibility gets established. So you really have to have a good team with you. Either that, or if you don't have the team at the start, obviously it is you most of the time. So what things which you can do better, I think you should only do that. There will be a lot of things coming to your way, and you may get prompted towards doing those things. But that is the attraction which you really have to keep distance with.
Fatal attraction.
So that is, that is the pain in the entrepreneurship, that wait or that patience. If you could really pass through that phase, I think you are definitely there standing, in that entrepreneurial zone.
Right.
It may take you, 2 years, 3 years, whatever time. You should be patient. And trust me, it is tough. It is not easy. I understand. There are a lot of pressures around to say no to, a particular work. But the other thing, the way people do it is, they create partners and they have that knack of getting the work done from the partners. If you have that, do it. Not a problem. But before taking the work, you should be very clear whether you are going to, service that work or not. If you are not, then you should not be doing it, because that is a lose-lose thing for your customer also and for yourself.
Wow, great advice there. So, Sambprasad sir, thanks a lot for coming on this podcast. It was really interesting, entertaining, and it gave us so many insights.
Thank you very much, YesUsers and Avi. I would like to thank Aditya also for this opportunity. It was a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed talking to you. And again, I would like to wish the new year to all the viewers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. That brings us to the end of this enlightening episode of YesUsers podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Sambprasad Kuvalekar. His insights were truly invaluable, and we are grateful for the knowledge he shared. If you found this episode inspiring, make sure to subscribe to our podcast for more such engaging discussion with industry leaders. Don't forget to leave us a review and share this episode within your network. You can follow Sambprasad on LinkedIn to keep up with his latest ventures and insights. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode of YesUsers podcast. This is your host Aviansh Tripathi signing off.